And now it's time for Power of Prophecy with your host, former professor at the University of Texas at Austin, career United States Air Force officer, and best-selling author, Texe Mars.
Hello, friends. This is Texe Mars. Welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. The Bible has many prophecies, of course, from Genesis to Revelation. All 66 books of the Bible seem to be infused with powerful prophecies of God. And they've all come true, and we can expect those that are yet unfulfilled to come true. I've always loved the book of Daniel because there's prophecies there, and it says these things are determined by God. A lot of people write to me about prophecy, and they say, well, does it really have to happen? Do we have to have Armageddon and these terrible diseases and monstrous wars and people killing each other and on and on? Couldn't we change history? Can't we change it with our own minds? Can't we think positive? Can't we get along? And, well, but you see, the Bible tells us these things are determined by God. He has determined them. You know, he knew what from the very beginning, he knew what the end would be. So we cannot change the course of human history with our minds. Of course, we all should think positive, think pure, think of God, and fight. Yes, fight for righteousness. Even if we know that in some cases we might lose, because I believe in losing, we win. A little ironic statement, isn't it? Remember the old commercials that had less is more? Well, counterintuitive. Let's just call it that. Counterintuitive. Well, today we're going to be talking about prophecy and how things are progressing. It's just amazing to me that they're progressing just like God warned us. He says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be again. We can go all the way back to the Garden of Eden and see what happened to Adam and Eve, and, well, Satan's doing it again. 20 to 25 years ago, I had best-selling books on the New Age movement. And many people ask me, do you think it'll get that bad? I mean, is this just a sign? Are these New Age believers and, that who believe in spirit channeling and pyramid powers and demonic entities and all that, don't you think that won't go over with the masses? Oh, no. Of course it will go over. And they were the sort of the early guard. They were the ones who brought this into the fold. Actually, the New Age movement brought the old age in. The things that if we had only studied them, we would find and discover that the occult powers of Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and Rome were being practiced today. And now they're practiced even more. And the things that we thought were so avant-garde and pioneering are, well, now they're just part of the structure of churches. Many of the things that I preached against and told people were occurring, people sort of, well, they shook their heads and they said, well, surely that won't come to my church. And now they themselves are practicing these occult powers and events. And I decided recently that I would like to talk to you, my good friends, about something I call the transformation of humanity. The transformation. Now, let me spell that for you. That would be Trance, capital F, Ormation. It really is based on trance. So many people have written to me and made me recall the old line in Wizard of Oz. Remember that? Little Dorothy, you know, she had her little doggy Toto in hand. And something terrible had occurred. She had tried to escape the hurricane, and you know, the house went up, everything went up. And when everything sort of settled down, she looked out the window and she says, "Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore." Well, dear friends, I don't think we're in America anymore. And a number of you have written to me and say, this is a crazy world. This is insane. This is like Twilight Zone. God, get me out of here. Haven't you ever thought that? Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I think of what I'm going to do that day and the agenda that I need to get done and so forth. And, you know, it's like I'm in a Twilight Zone. Let me wake up first more fully. Things are just different, aren't they? We don't just drudge along day to day. Incredible events are occurring. I often think that we're all in a trance of sorts. You know, in John 3:3, verse 3 of the chapter, 3rd chapter, Jesus said, "You must be born again in spirit and in truth." Now, most people don't understand that statement. They disregard it. They laugh about being born again. That's pretty dramatic, friends, to be born again. Not going in your mother's womb again, but in spirit and in truth. That's an incredible event. Think about it. To be born again. Whatever your age, whether you're 13 or 48 or 90, you're going to be born again in spirit and in truth. Suddenly, you're going to be able to divine truth and know what it is and want to go toward the truth. You will want to avoid the evil and the sin. You will want to stay on the path to righteousness. You'll hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you'll attain it in spirit and in truth. You know, I saw a movie recently. Temple Grandin was the name of it, about a young lady that had autism. But she somehow conquered some of her autism. Of course, it really affected her mind and her mental abilities and so forth. But underneath the autism, she evidently was a very bright young lady. Temple Grandin. True story, by the way. But Temple Grandin wanted to, she went to college and she wanted to get into cattle. She wanted to know all about cows. Well, that was sort of crazy. She had never been around livestock and animals before, but she wanted to, and so they put her in this big stockyard where they were killing cows. And they would put the electric shock, contacts on their head, one on each side, and shock the cow, and it would just go limp. It was a very functioning 100% okay cow, and then it got to a certain point in the line when the cowboys, hit it with that electric contact, the prod, whatever it was more than a prod, it was a killer, and this electric power went into their brain, and then whoomp, they were just dead, and they just fell. Well, Temple Grandin thought different than other people. She thought different than other people. And she said to the bosses there, she said she was an intern, like a college intern. And they were all making fun of her, not only because she had autism, because she was a girl. What's a girl doing with us here? She doesn't know anything about cows. But at a certain part of the instruction they brought them, they showed them how they killed a cow. Then, of course, they took it back and they butchered it and they did all this. But she wanted to know something. She said her face was puzzled and she was straining to understand. And she looked at each cow as they brought it in and shocked it and killed it. And she said, "Can I ask a question?" And the guy said, "Okay." She says, "Where did that cow go?" He said, "What do you mean where it went? It's still there. After the shock, it just falls dead." She says, "No, where does it go?" He said, "What are you talking about, young lady?" She said, "Obviously, something has changed. The cow is not a cow anymore. It doesn't move. It doesn't move. It has no animation. It has no spirit." Where did that go, the spirit that it had? They didn't know what she was talking about. But I, as a Christian, knew what she was talking about. Because I've seen men and women whose lives have been changed in an instant. And suddenly they were a new person. Totally new. They thought different. They acted different. They wanted to be different. They were different. Where did the old person go? I don't know. God took it away. Now, if you didn't change like that, I'm saying you still had some flesh, of course, and you still had some fleshly things that tried to bring you back into the old life, the sin life. But you were basically changed. Happened to me when I was 16 years of age. If that experience has not happened to you, I would like you to write to me and say, "Texe, I want to be born again. I want to be born again." And I'll try to help you if I can to be born again. It will make a great difference in your life. And maybe your friends and loved ones will soon be saying of you, "What happened to her? Where did she go?" She's a new lady now. She's a new man. God tells us to be awake, to wake up, to put on the new person. And once you believe in Jesus Christ, that he died on the cross for your sins, and you want God to redeem you, to make you fresh as snow and forgive you of your sins, and when he does, well, you're born again in spirit and in truth. Until that time, you're in a trance state. You're only semi-conscious. You really can't see the world as it is. You think that drugs and alcohol and lying and thieving and all these things are good. You don't understand at all how they can be harmful to people. Trance status. The transformation, Trance formation of humanity. People have been placed into a trance. It's as if they went into some kind of an entertainment hall, and there for their entertainment was a hypnotist who mesmerized certain people and put them in a trance-like state, and they didn't even know what they were doing, and then he snapped his fingers and they woke up. What have you been doing for the last 15 minutes? Well, you didn't know. You looked at your clock, you're watching. 15 minutes had passed by. Have you ever driven in a car and you're driving down the highway and it's not an exciting day and there's so much traffic and you're there and you're thinking about this or that and you're not really thinking about driving, and pretty soon you wake up and you discover that you've gone maybe 3 or 4 miles. And you say to yourself, "Wow, I'm glad a car didn't jump in front of me. I'm glad some automobile did not come up from the side and when I was asleep at the wheel." And I thank God. I'm wondering if God is protecting me while I'm driving. My goodness, I've been asleep, for several miles. Suddenly I woke up. I was in a trance-like state. I believe that Satan and evil men today are discovering new ways to place you in a trance. Now, I know you think that you're immune from these kind of things, that you have awakened. But let me read to you from the UPI news source. Recently, an article came out. It says, technology has spawned a new brain. It says technology has changed the way people think, creating a new brain. Two Italian psychological experts say. It's a new book that both of these psychologists published called Techno-Liquidity. Techno-Liquidity. It says that the entertainment technology, such as video games, quote, has triggered an evolutionary leap, just like the written word 3,000 years ago. It has changed our memory. Our brain has lost certain connections. The Italian news agency quoted the two scientists as saying, some circuits have been lost and others have been developed, circuits that are closely linked to perception. There are things that we are not aware of that are happening in the environment. Yes, right now, there are things around you that are happening that you do not even perceive. So they don't happen. Any policeman could tell you that. A veteran cop could tell you that at a trial. Two witnesses to a crime both say they saw something different. But they saw the same crime, and they're not lying. They're telling you just what they saw. But each perceived it in a different way. They might even describe the victim or the perpetrator in a different way. Our brains are being rewired by the internet today. And there are people that are addicted to the internet, and I don't know why their thumbs don't fall off. They're just going like lickety-split. Of course, now they're passing all kind of laws, making it illegal to use your iPhone or the whatever when you're driving down the road. For many years, psychiatrists, psychologists, many under the employ of our government, have been researching ways to place people in a trance, even to place the entire population in a trance. And it seems that my good friend David Livingstone, he's written a number of books, he sent me a paper yesterday. He says the purpose of popular American music is to produce idols who can be used to convey subversive subliminal messages. The videos you see on TV, they contain subliminal messages. Subversive. And we worship these idols. They're great people. They may be stupid as a rock, or dumb as I don't know what, a worm. But there are idols. And we worship them, and they will convey to us subliminal messages that the government wants to get across. This is why the government has for many years been paying these people. And I've told you before, such as a group such as the Grateful Dead, with its message of rebellion and hate toward the prevailing culture and drugs and LSD. And yes, the Grateful Dead was paid by the government to go around putting out their music. And these hundreds and thousands of groupies followed them everywhere they went. They were idols. Paid by the government. Well, one of the fathers of public relations, a nephew of Sigmund Freud, His name was Edward Bernays. He wrote this, and listen to this very carefully. He was the father of public relations and advertising. He said, and this is back about 50 years ago, he said, human beings need to have Godhead symbols, and public relations councils must help to create them. We have no being in the air to watch over us. Did you hear what he said? We have no being in the air to watch over us. We must watch over ourselves, and that is where public relations counselors can prove their effectiveness, by making the public believe that human gods are watching over us for our own benefit. There are no gods outside of us. He said, there are no gods. But the advertising people, Madison Avenue, prove their effectiveness by making us believe that the gods are watching over us. Well, I believe that because, think of it. I've been going on many radio programs, and people tell me I worship the same God as the Hindus or the Muslims. It's all the same God. There's a very well-known song. It's a beautiful song, as long as you don't study the words very close, by Bette Midler. It's, they're watching over us. They're watching. They're watching. Who? It doesn't care. Doesn't matter. It's gods. The gods are watching us. If you're a Muslim, well, Allah is watching over you. If you're a Buddhist, I suppose they're the spirits of your ancestors watching over you. The gods. They exist. Satan is a god to many people. Now, today I want you to understand that sex is the same as it used to be. It's just that now we're so vulgar and dirty and sordid as a nation that we let everybody know that we're doing it. And that it's okay for you to do it. And it doesn't hurt anybody. And it doesn't matter if you're a transgender or a homosexual or a lesbian or a bisexual or a tranny or whatever you're going to be, it doesn't matter. Of course, we've seen the effect, the divorces, the breakup of homes, the suicides among our youth, the drug culture. Of course it matters. But they say it doesn't matter anyway. The gods are watching over you, whoever they may be. Now think of it, friends. If you're at least 25, you know that things have changed. If you're 35 or 40 or 50 years old, boy, they changed. If you're 70 or 80 or 90, you have seen a real revolution. Homosexuality, transgenderism, pedophilia, cross-dressers, bestiality, tantra ritual. Hollywood's giving it to us. TV's giving it to us. How about this movie, 50 Shades of Grey? Sadism and bondage, incest, marriage breakups, infidelity. Every day I get all kinds of trash on my internet telling me to go out and have a hookup or a meeting. Some group called Madison that say, you just take a lunch hour and go hook up with somebody. You can stay married. It doesn't matter. This is just for fun. The F word is everywhere. The F word is everywhere. I was thinking about it. Friend, when I was a kid, there was no F word. I think there was certainly not one in polite society. You know what I'm talking about, the F word. But I've heard Hillary say it, Bill Clinton say it, Joe Biden, our vice president, said it. John Kerry, the Secretary of State, said the F word. I mean, when the Obamacare bill was passed, And Obama came out to meet the public. He came up to the microphone. He was introduced by Joe Biden, the vice president. And Joe Biden patted him on the back and said, "This is a big effing deal." And all of America heard that. This is a big effing deal. Wow. Our vice president under George W. Bush goes to Congress for some photo op. There was Senator Leahy, Democrat of Vermont. And Vice President Dick Cheney and Senator Leahy got into some kind of a little imbroglio, some little specco argument, right on the floor of the U.S. Senate. And Cheney says to Leahy, "Why don't you go F yourself?" Cameras were rolling. And just recently, I saw Cheney on television being interviewed. He was asked about telling Leahy to go F himself. And he smiled and said, "I felt quite good about that." Wow. I felt quite good about that. Now, again, it depends on how old you are, but I don't feel good about it at all. There's no one who's not interviewed that will not have at least a couple of dirty statements to make. In fact, they're not even interviewed unless they have some dirty things to say. Now, George Washington, we go all the way back to George Washington, and I looked up George Washington. It seems like he didn't like the F word. He didn't like any kind of profanity. Why should he? He's president of the United States of America. George Washington, 1775, 1778, 76. In one of his first general orders back in 1775, he wrote to his troops. Think about it. You'd think more important things would be on his mind than cursing and profanity, wouldn't you? His men are starving to death. They have no shoes. They're cold. They're hungry. They're facing great numbers of the British. Here's what he wrote. He says, "The general most earnestly requires and expects a due observance of those articles of war established for the government of the army, which forbid profane cursing, swearing, and drunkenness." Let me say it to you in the way an East Texan would, my friend. There ain't no cursing, swearing, and drunk behavior here. That's what he said. No profane cursing or swearing or drunkenness. Later on, he said it again. I guess they kept it up. About a year later, he sent out another order. He says, "The general is sorry to be informed that the foolish and wicked practice of profane cursing and swearing, a vice heretofore little known in an American army, is growing into a fashion. He hopes the officers will, by example as well as influence, endeavor to check it." He said, "And that both they and the men will reflect that we can little hope of the blessing of heaven on our army if we insult it by our impiety and folly. Added to this, it is a vice so mean and low, without any temptation, that every man of sense and character detests and despises it." Well, Biden, you're a wicked, filthy, dirty man. And Dick Cheney, your language befits a cesspool of vomit. I agree with George Washington, but I'm old school. I'll be right back in just a minute. We're going to have a lot more on the transformation of humanity. Part 1, we're looking at sex, politicians, and war. We'll be right back after this brief message. Hello again, friends. Texe Mars here. I was recently reading several books about the religion of Judaism. And I wrote an essay about it, and I said that out of 1,000 pastors, if you ask these 1,000 pastors, very educated, very literate men, and a few women, what does a Jewish rabbi believe? In what God do they believe? Can you name the gods and goddesses of Judaism? Ask 1,000 pastors that, and guess what? They all know. They all know the God of Judaism. Why, he's the God of the Old Testament, the great I am. That's how ignorant the pastors are of the Judaic religion. In fact, in Judaism today, they do not worship the God of the Old Testament. They worship, well, a number of gods and goddesses. Now, they do have a prayer in Judaism, the Shema, which says the God that we worship is one God. And they parade that around Christians and say, you know, you worship Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. You worship three gods. That's what they say about us, the Jewish rabbis. You worship three gods. We only worship one. Now, that statement that they worship one God is a lie. And it reminds me of the Hindu woman who called me on an interview line on a talk show I was on. She says, Mr. Morris, I want to correct what you said about Hinduism. I said, okay, well, tell me where I'm going wrong. She said, in Hinduism, you said we have many gods and goddesses. We only have one God. I says, well, ma'am, there are many who worship the great cobra goddess, Kali. And there are many who worship the rat goddess. And there are those who worship the male gods. In fact, the experts say that they have counted 3 million deities in Hinduism. Oh, yes, she said. There are 3 million, maybe more, but they're all the same God. You just worship the version that you choose for yourself. Oh, God as you understand him. He can be the rat god or the snake god or whatever you want, or the goddess, of course. Oh, yes, she said. And I suppose you worship my God. Oh, yes, we worship your God. Have you ever read the New Testament? Oh, no, I don't read that. You don't even know what my God has said. You don't know the first thing about my God. My God said there are no other gods except him. Well, he's wrong. So immediately we had a little disagreement there. But I made it plain that she didn't worship my God. She didn't know my God. When a Muslim imam says, I worship your God, I said, no, you're a liar. You worship Allah. And according to Allah, Jesus did not die and resurrect himself from the cross. You see, they have lying devils, their gods. The Apostle Paul in the Bible talked about the gods. He said there are many gods, and there are many idols. Now he said an idol in itself is nothing, but there are gods behind it. Oh, yes. Oh, my friends. You have an idol in your house. There are gods that are going to come into your house. So-called gods, devil gods. This is what you don't understand. You have the Jewish Star of David. It represents the number 666. What God does that represent? Satan. You wear the Jewish Star of David, you're worshiping Satan. Oh, no, I don't worship him. You have him around your neck. He's got you around the neck. We have a book, a classic book, entitled The Two Babylons. The Two Babylons. It's by a great old English preacher. I believe the book is actually written about 1820. It's that ancient of a book. And it's such a wonderful book that I suppose I have read it at least 10 times. Maybe I'm stretching it 8 or 9. I read some parts of it more than that. I've read it over and over, and I find that it's the New Age movement. I find that it's Judaism. It's all of the New Age cults. They're all found in this 1820 book. Why? Because Satan was around in 1820, and he's around now. He's preaching the same things. They're wrapped up and they're putting crystal powers and pyramid powers and, spirit channeling and all of these this new garb, new costumes, but it's the same stuff. It's a terrific book, The Two Babylons. He says the Catholic Church brought it all in. And you visit St. Peter's Cathedral in the Vatican, and there you'll have it, friends. I've been there a number of times. I saw the goddess there. I saw the goddess painted on the wall. She had the whole earth under her foot. Don't tell me they don't worship the great goddess. Oh, yes, they do. In this book, you're going to learn who the goddess is. Hislop will introduce you to all the gods and goddesses of Babylon, Egypt, Rome, Greece. You'll find who the Romans worship. Do you remember that the Apostle Paul said that in the city of Ephesus, they worshiped the great goddess? Her name was Diana. She was the goddess whom Paul says in the New Testament, all the world worships, but they just use different names. She was Hecate in one part of the world. She was Cybele in another part of the world. She was Semiramis in Babylon. She was Venus, the goddess of love in Rome and in Greece. And so whatever version of the great goddess you wanted to worship, you could. But there they worshiped her as Diana. And you know, today in witchcraft, would you like to know whom the goddess is that most witches worship? Her name? It's Diana. She's still alive. I don't think she looks like her pictures, so-called pictures that they, paint or draw. Diana, the great goddess. There's Pan, too, the horn god of the forest. I was up in Washington State, and there was a lady there, and, I was at the front of the podium. I was talking about one of my books, and there was a big crowd there. It was sort of like the Phil Donahue or Oprah Winfrey show or something, and he went out into the audience with a microphone and said, does any of you have any comment about what Texe Morris is saying? And this woman, she looked quite manly, she stood up and she started crying, and she started pointing her finger at me, and she said, you are against my God. I said, really? Yes, she said, I'm a witch. And it's people like you that have caused witches to be burnt at the stake over the years. I says, well, ma'am, tell us about your God and your goddess. And she looked at me sort of startled then. God and goddess? I said, I'm sure if you're a real witch, you have a God and a goddess. What is your goddess's name? She said, Diana. And I said, then probably your God's name is Pan, the horn god of the forest. She said, yes. She was very uncertain. She said, well, yes, we worship Pan. She said, but he's not the devil. I said, really? Does he have fur on? Oh, well, yes. He's half beast, half man? Yes. He has horns? Yes, she said. I said, you can call the devil by whatever name you want. You call him Pan. You're worshiping the devil and his goddess, Diana. That's who you worship. At least she, identified herself. Up to that time, I was just a mean old Christian that was, saying bad things about her gods. And, of course, we had not even brought up witchcraft during the whole session there. But we were talking about human sacrifice. And I was explaining that in many of these New Age cults and religions, they actually sacrifice human beings. I want you to get this book, The Two Babylons. They had human sacrifices back then, too. And they had sexual religion, a sex religion, a phallic religion, because many in their religion would worship the phallus, sick as they were in their minds. And you know what, friends? Millions of Americans worship the phallus. They do. That's all they do worship. And it's honored on television every night. It's honored in all your songs. It's honored in all of your comic books and video games. The Two Babylons. It's a book you won't forget. And we're offering it for just $20. Just $20. Please add $5 for shipping and handling. Ask for The Two Babylons. Write to us at Power of Prophecy, 1708 Patterson Road, Patterson Road, Austin, Texas, 78733. Ask for The Two Babylons. The Two Babylons. By the way, Revelation 17 says the world will be as Babylon. And that's what you'll see. You'll say, my goodness, I'm seeing the same names, the same practices, the same beliefs, the same devils in this second Babylon as occurred in the first Babylon. Now, you go to our website, powerofprophecy.com, or just text Mars.com. And you can order the Two Babylons there. Use your PayPal or your charge card. You can phone us anytime during the work week here. Just phone us at 1-800, it's toll free, 1-800-234-9673. And say, I want that book that Texe, dumb as he is, he had to read 9 or 10 times to get it in his head. That's true. That's true. I'll admit he was a lot brighter than me, and he wrote a great book. I couldn't put it down. I read it over and over and over again. I've got about 3 copies here in the office, I believe. Each one of them is underlined. Ran out of room, so I had to start with another book. The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. Just say The Two Babylons book. We'll get it right out to you. All right, now let's return to our regular program. We're talking about the transformation of humanity. This is part 1. Today we're going to be talking about sex, politicians, and war. How they've changed. How we've all gone into a trance state. Even those who claim to be born again are in this trance state, many of them. They have not awakened. Recently read a poll result by Barna. They're sort of like Gallup or Roper polls and so forth. And they said that among young people, men and women, there was as much promiscuousness, sex outside of marriage, in Christian churches as there was outside of Christian churches. How can that be? If you're born again in spirit and truth, you don't act like a slut. You don't act like a young man that, has wicked behavior. You don't act like that. And you don't want to treat women that way. And you women, you don't want to be treated that way, and you don't want a man that is basically scum. Dare I say it, it's true. I went over a list a while ago talking about some of the things we see every day in movies and such. And it's interesting to me. I don't see these kind of shows, but I understand that shows like Modern Problems or Modern Marriage or whatever it is, and all of these, they all have homosexual characters. And now they've gotten to the place where there's 2 homosexual men or women living together. They're married even together. And I was talking with one woman. She said she liked that TV program so much. She said, I love the gay pair. I said, do you? Oh, yes. And they have adopted a little child. Oh. She said, but they're very funny. Oh, they just make me laugh. They're so lovable, both of them. I said, well, that's great. That's makes you think that all gays are like that. She said, well, I don't know that they're not. I don't know anything about gays. I said, well, why don't you go Google up a story in Atlanta, Georgia? What happened recently to a young boy, 11 years old. He was walking down the street. He was picked up by 2 gay men. They took him back to their apartment. They tied him up. They tortured him. They raped him, and they murdered him. They were homosexuals. Oh, she almost fainted. Oh, you haven't heard about those kind of homosexuals? Well, wait till there's some kind of a great parade or some big fun festival down in San Francisco and see if you can get pictures of it. Of course, they don't want to show you most of the time. You'll see the hedonism. You'll see the paganism. You'll see the phallicism. You'll see them parading down the streets naked, making fun of Jesus, making fun of the Bible, Some of them dress like nuns and priests, exhibit, yes, their male or women organs to the crowd and laugh. That's the true spirit of homosexuality, dear friends. That little boy that died. And that is a true story. Now, we have pornography. And I turned on the TV last night, and there was, I think it was, what was the guy? There was Jimmy Fallon. Who's the other guy on? Jimmy Kimmel, yeah. He was talking about that people are going to see this movie 50 Shades of Grey about sadism and bondage and all that sexual junk. He says people seem to be shocked by it. If they just watched pornography on the internet one night, they would see 10 times as much. If they were to watch pornography one night on the internet, they would see 10 times as much as in the movie 50 Shades of Grey. Sexual liberation, abortion, sexual murders, magic, music, the sex revolution, they call it. It's vulgarity. It's the F word. You know, I go with Wanda sometime. We go out to a ball game or some kind of a sport on the outside or singing or whatever. Always expect for somebody to be right below you in the stands or right above you or the side of you shouting off profanities. They don't see it's any problem at all. You're there with your wife. I'd like to have a nice time. And their vulgar, filthy, dirty mouths are just going off like firecrackers. Has it ever happened to you? I bet it has. I know they're passing laws now to force vulgarity on our kids, sexual vulgarity. In California, of course, they're teaching gay history. I have no idea what gays have done to help our history. I don't see them as, I mean, you know, the Wright brothers, as far as I know, they were not gay. Henry Ford was not gay. Charles Lindbergh certainly was not gay. What do you mean? We're going to teach you gay history. I don't think I want to know about the gay history. But Democrat California Governor Jerry Brown said everybody needs to learn it. They need to learn about the contribution of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans. Recently saw a show on TV. It says, we're going to show you a female CEO, a woman who invented the satellite radio. Well, I don't mind honoring a woman. She's an inventor. She came out, but I didn't know if it was a woman or a man. It's a transgender. They said she's the highest paid CEO in America. Now she's invented some kind of robot. Or she. It's a transgender. She's also invented a new religion called Texe. I got online. I wanted to find out about this new religion, Texe, and had a whole manual on it. Of course, it's just New Age garbage. That's all it is. And she's a transgender. You know, she was, or he, was born as a woman, is now as a man, or vice versa. I don't even know what they are. But God knows. God knows what they should be. Well, Brown said history should be honest. But he's fostering a lie. He's fostering a terrible lie. Now, who are the politicians bringing Americans this stuff? You see, in state after state, they have passed laws against same-sex marriage, but the politicians want it. They're stuffing it down our mouths. The judges want it. Who appoints the judges? Well, the politicians. But the people don't want it. Well, we'll give you some time while we're forcing it down your, throat. While you have to do it. And if you don't sell your cakes or take your picture, if you got a business and you don't serve the gays in a marriage or whatever, well, we're going to take, I understand they made somebody pay $150,000 just last week because they didn't bake cakes for some same-sex marriage. They said our Christian religion forbids that. They don't care about your Christian religion. These are devil politicians, friends. Have you noticed how much politicians lie these days? I did not have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. And if you want your own doctor, you can keep it. If you want your own health plan, you can keep it. It doesn't matter whether it was Bill Clinton or Obama that made either statement. They're just lies. They're not embarrassed about them. They must laugh about them. They laugh that you and I are dumb enough to have fallen for them. And everybody wants money from the government. 49 million Americans are on food stamps. 49 million Americans. I recently read that at the University of Michigan, there are about 50,000 students, and almost all of them get food stamps. I couldn't believe it. Whoa, just a minute. I thought food stamps were for families who are very poor, almost destitute. They need milk. They need, the basic staples of life. No, this is for well-off students. It didn't matter whether your parents made $1 million a year or $500,000. You could go down and get like $169 a month or whatever it was in food stamps. It was like a stipend. It was a payment. Every student on campus got it. You think I'm kidding you? You say, Texe, if your dad was head of General Motors, you couldn't go to University of Michigan and get food stamps. Yes, you could. Every one of them were getting food stamps. Do you think they were buying food with it? No. They're buying drugs, they're buying alcohol, whatever they're buying. The politicians have given that. Now here in Texas, let me explain something to you, friends. I'm 70 years old, and I spent over 20 years in the U.S. Air Force. One of my medals was the Vietnam Service Medal. Of course, all that was just I spent basically a year over there and 2 years in Southeast Asia. And, they promised me that if you spend a full career in the Air Force, we'll pay for your medical care when you get out. And they've been doing a pretty good job of it. But one thing they don't pay is dental. I have to pay my own dental. Okay. Juan and I, we pay our own dental. If we have a toothache, we have to go get it taken care of. But if I was an illegal alien with 7 kids or 10 kids or 12 kids, my dental would be taken care of. And all of my kids could go to a pediatric dentist. Here in Austin, Texas, there are pediatric clinics everywhere. And they put big billboards up. Are you on Medicaid? We'll give you full dental care. I spent 20 years in the armed services. I could have been killed at any time. But it didn't matter. I don't get dental care. Now, it's a small thing. Or is it? Pretty soon, it's... Juan and I were in West Virginia a few years ago, and boy, people were poor there. Lived in mobile homes, trailers, and boy, they were poor. They'd all been laid off from the coal mines. They were poor. But it seemed like they all had nice teeth. I couldn't figure it out. I thought they'd all have yellow teeth, snaggle tooth, and all that. No. Well, the government takes care of their teeth. They all have Medicaid. In fact, the government's giving them all kinds of things now. And the food stores say they get more food stamps than they get, cash and charge cards. That's how people pay. That's a normal payment, pay food stamps. They don't call it food stamp, now they call it SNAP program or something or other. Meanwhile, while our politicians are giving all this welfare and goodies and putting people in a trance-like state, they're torturing a certain percentage of us. They are building gulag concentration camps across the globe. Not just in America. Gitmo, that's a circus act. They're building prison camps and torturing people and murdering many of them in Poland, in Czechoslovakia. Around the globe, they're doing it. They recently put out a report telling us what happened on 9/11. Now we're going to tell you the truth, they say. But guess what? There were 28 pages missing. No, that had to be redacted because we can't tell you everything. We have to hide some things that happened. Really? 9/11 occurred 15 years ago. 15 years ago. We want to know what happened. Well, there's 28 pages here, and we've decided for your own good, we're not going to tell you. Was it Israel? Was it the Saudi Arabians? Who helped perpetrate this horrible crime? Well, that's where the 28 pages will tell you, but we can't tell you that. How about the John F. Kennedy assassination? Well, that was 1963. That was over 50 years ago. Surely you'll tell us about that. Well, no, there's certain documents that we can't release to the public. We can't release them to you. What? John Podesta, Hillary's campaign manager, says that the thing that he was disappointed about the most when he was in the White House under Bill Clinton was that he couldn't tell us about the UFOs. Well, I know a lot. There are a lot of top secret and secret documents about UFOs, but we can't tell anybody. On one hand, the government says they don't exist. On the other, they say, well, we've got these secrets and we can't reveal them to you. It makes everybody, puts them in a trance state, doesn't it? I believe in UFOs. Well, you're an idiot. Nobody believes in UFOs. But, of course, the government has all kinds of secret information. They've got to stamp it secret, file it away, and we have to pay millions of dollars to keep it secret from you because you're an idiot, because you're crazy, because they don't exist. Huh? They're inducing a double mind in people, a double mind in everyone. It's a trance state they're putting you in. It's the criminal politicians and liars and torturers and murderers. And they've made war God. They've made war God. Remember what Orwell said? Ignorance is strength. War is peace. That's what they tell you. War is peace. And the number one movie in America is about a sniper. And soon we will have snipers all over America. Oh, yes, there will be snipers. They're training them. There's a reason why they brought in 80,000 Ukrainians into Sacramento, California. 80,000 in one city. What are they doing here? Why did they bring in 80,000 Ukrainians? Now they're bringing in thousands of Syrians, the newspaper said this morning. Syrians. Why are they bringing in thousands of Syrians? To kill you. Oh, Texe, that's crazy. Really? Is it? And, of course, we all love Israel, don't we? We're going to have Netanyahu before Congress. It's his third time, and before he was welcomed like Hitler and Stalin. And they applauded 29 times for the guy during his last appearance before the Congress. He's going to come again. Now, he told us that Iran would have nuclear weapons by, what was it, the year 2000? Then the year 2002, then the year 2005, then in the year 2007, and, well, several other times since. And now they're going to have, within 1 month or 2 months, they'll have nuclear bombs. But that date comes and it goes. And there is one nation in the Middle East that has bombs, Israel. And the United States has helped Israel to develop its bombs. The world's a mixed up place. This is a trance-like state. But you can awaken. You can be born again in spirit and truth. And when you do, you'll suddenly say, wait just a minute. I want truth. I want to know the facts. You're not going to lie to me anymore. I don't believe you, government, because you'll have the greatest truth teller in all of history in your heart. He will give you the strength to find out the truth. Remember X-Files? The truth is out there somewhere. Yes, it is. The truth is out there somewhere. And his name is Jesus Christ. I'm Texe Mars. Been great being with you today. Hope you'll...
And now it's time for Power of Prophecy with your host, former professor at the University of Texas at Austin, career United States Air Force officer, and best-selling author, Texe Mars.
Hello, friends. This is Texe Mars, and welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. Well, you know, if prophecy includes anything, it includes machines. Machines. Because machines play a huge role in the life of Americans today. Without machines, well, where would we be? Well, some people say we'd be doing a lot better. We at least would have sane minds, perhaps. But I want to talk to you today about machines, about how they may impact what people think about God. And could machines become God to some people? And finally, we want to talk about the tribe or the race or the bloodline, or just the people, the tribe, let's just call them, who have exalted themselves and who say they are going to be the masters of a new world order, a Jewish utopia. They shall be exalted. They will be their own Messiah, and they'll rule over us. But there's only about 18 million of these people in the whole world. But could they use a bully boy to take over the world? Have they already got a bully boy? Is the United States their golem? And what is a golem? Well, the transformation of humanity, part 2. Now, last week I talked about sex, politicians, and war, and how it seems that our governments don't really respect what you and I want. We want the Constitution that's been there for many years. We want the America that we've known to love, and now we're beginning to find it a little distasteful. We like the old America, and we want things back the way they were before gay marriage, same-sex marriage, and pornography, and incest, and vulgarity, and 50 Shades of Gray, or whatever color you got. Before robots, and transhumanism, and artificial intelligence, and virtual reality, and the internet, and Google, and so forth. You know, we'd be glad to do without these things. Just bring us back to maybe the 1950s, or the 40s, or 1960s, whenever. A lot of people say to me, Tex, do you ever feel that you're living in a unreal world? Do you ever feel like this is the Twilight Zone? You know, I do. Sometimes I sit and stare at my television screen, or I just sit in my old easy chair and I think back and I say, boy, things are crazy. This America is nuts. I was recently reading a report that says meditation is growing. You know, the thing where you put your legs together and you wrap your arms around each other and you go om and you begin to chant and all that. But they said that meditation is popular because people are trying to slow the world down. Isn't that interesting? The world's too fast. Things are happening. They can't seem to stop it. You know, Juan and I were considering buying a new home recently, and we saw a number of homes, and they don't. The new homes today don't have any backyards. Now, I'll tell you, I'm a little bit old. I don't want to go play in my backyard, but it'd just be nice to have a little bit of, maybe 20 feet of backyard. But they don't have any backyards now. And the real estate person says they don't need them anymore. The kids are in the house. They're communicating with their friends with their computers, with their iPhones. I said, well, really? Well, I used to play ball. We'd have to go out and find a place to play and play football or baseball, even if we had an old tin can or, anything we could play with or, that. Well, soccer moms, take their kids to the games. They're on a very tight schedule, too. Wow. And the kids start playing football in the Pee-wee leagues as little tykes. And there's no freedom for the kids. And we went into neighborhoods, we didn't see any kids. We said, well, don't they have any children? Well, they're all inside. Or their parents are bringing them places. I feel sorry for the kids. They don't have any freedom. I'll have to tell you, I had plenty of time. I thought about things. I didn't get bored. I made my own toys. I created my own games. And I thought about things. I remember I used to have a game, I called it World War III, and I would invent nations. And they all had names, and they would fight each other. And so this one had so many tanks, this one had so many nuclear bombs, and there would be a war, and the different sides would win. I would do all kinds of things to think. And of course, I began reading at a very early age. There was a half-price bookstore. Actually, we didn't call them half-price bookstores. They really weren't that much, but you go down and buy a book for the equivalent of, let's say, $20 today. But you could buy it second or third or fourth or fifth hand for 50 cents in these shops. And we'd go buy a whole box full of old books. You'd be amazed what I read as a kid. I read books that no one ever read. I read books by communists, by Nazis, against communists, against Nazism. And I would go to school. Sometimes we would do reports. They'd say, tell us about a book you've read. And I remember I was in the fourth grade. I came back and I explained about a book that I'd read about the nuclear explosions at Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. And I gave my little report, and I talked about everything that happened, and the people's skin actually melted and fell off, and how many people got killed, and so, and all the other kids were just amazed. They had their little books about, Buffalo Joe or something, or, I don't know what they had. Little kids' books. I was talking about something, that the 40, 50-year-old people read. And the teacher said to me, I remember, she said, do you read those kinds of books, Tex? I said, that's the only kind I have. We didn't have any money to go buy kids' books. Of course, once I found out where the library was, I was the main, culprit there. I was there all the time. I was in heaven. There was a library. They had books, real books. Had even newspapers from all over the world. It was like candy to me. But today's kids don't worry about that at all. I asked my grandkids, I only see them 2 weeks a year. When they came to see me, where would y'all like to go? We could go here. We could go see the, Yosemite, or we could see this natural park, or this creek, or this swimming pool, or I want to go to Disney World. Disney World? That's artificial. That's tinsel. That's not even real. That's where I want to go. Well, let me admit to you something, friends. I have never been to Disneyland, and I have never been to Disney World. I will not take my kids or grandkids there. I'm just a mean old man. But if they want to go to Yellowstone National Park, or Yosemite National Park, or Big Bend National Park, or some beautiful state park in Texas, if they want to go fishing or to the beach to see nature, I'll do that. But I'm not going to take them to Disney World or Disneyland. I'm just so mean. I'm just a cruel master. We live right near a creek. I told the kids, let's go hike some. Oh, I'd rather go, do such and such. Why don't you want to walk down in the creek? It's exciting. No, not for them. Oh, we know about creeks. We want to go where there's people and we want to ride cars or these little bitty bumper cars or what. Nonsense. Nonsense. I have a feeling that the whole world has been put into a trance. I do. I don't feel that we're here, folks. I don't believe you and I are. I think many of you think just like I do. You want something real. God is real. Now they have thousands of deities and gods in the world. And when I see all of these movies from Star Wars to Star Trek and on and on and on, I realize that the gods of today are not the God of the Bible. And to tell the truth about it, the kids find the Bibles boring. Well, I want something more exciting than that God or that deity. So they're jazzing up the Bibles. They're having the Star Wars version of the Bible for the kids. They're in a trance-like state. They have the double mind inserted. They're in a trance-like state. And I believe the whole world is becoming barbaric. Barbarism. Psychopathic. Evil. Because that's what they see in the world. And why shouldn't they act that way? I want to talk to you today about the transformation of humanity by machines, robots, the internet, and what people think today of God. You know, God, I believe he has, I don't know what you'd call it, feelings, but he does. Some people say, well, you're putting human characteristics on God. Well, that's what the Bible says. He gets angry. He loves. He hates some things. Now, I know it's not popular to say today that God hates anything, but he does. I suspect he hates drugs. I suspect he hates pornography, prostitution. I believe that God hates cruelty and murder and rape and thuggery. Now, if you do any of those things, I think God hates you. Oh, I thought he loved everybody. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. But he loves you enough to give you an opportunity to get that out of your life, to ask him for redemption, to say, Lord, take it from me. And you won't think about that anymore. You'll think on things true and pure. But until then, God hates those things. You see, if you love somebody, you want the best for them. Does God want that for you? If you had a little child, would you want him to walk out into a public street if he's only 2 years old and their car is charging back and forth? Is that what you call love? I don't think so. God hates incest, vulgarity, infidelity, profane language, loss of the traditional family. He hates all those things. He does. But he also loves you and I. Now, I talked to you about Edward Bernays last week. He was the father of public relations, the father, you might say, of modern advertising. Here's what he once wrote. He wrote, human beings need to have Godhead symbols, and public relations councils must help to create them. We have no being in the air to watch over us. We must watch over ourselves. And that is where public relations counselors can prove their effectiveness, by making the public believe that human gods are watching over us for our own benefit. Everybody believes in angels. They're popular. Angel jewelry sells billions of dollars worth a year. Angels. Angels are watching over everybody. They want to make sure that everybody goes to heaven. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Everybody believes they're going to heaven. Nobody wants to go to hell, and most people don't believe in hell, but they believe in a heaven. I don't know why they should believe in anything. If you don't believe in a heaven or a hell, why would you believe in a heaven? Or vice versa. Now, our brains have changed. They really have. You know, the synapses, the chemical reaction back and forth. An article in UPI said that technology has spawned a new brain. I told you about that last week. People think differently. Their brains are, arcing back and forth with electronic signals. And these two psychological scientists in Rome, in Italy, have written a new book called Techno-Liquidity. You think different. Now, I want to tell you something, friends. Have you ever read the book Democracy in America? Democracy in America. I forget the man's name who wrote it. I'm sorry. Democracy in America. Well, maybe somebody will call up while we're doing this program today. Democracy in America. It was written by a Frenchman who came to America when America was a brand new country. After 1787, we had a constitution. We're just forming. He wanted to know about this new America that had democracy, that had liberty, had freedom, had a republic. He wanted to know about it. But he wanted to know about the people. What kind of people were we? To create the first true republic, the first democracy. What were we? How did we think? What was our religion? What was our education system like? You know what he found? He found that people believed in Jesus, first of all. He also found that in every household, you see, most Americans think, well, the world's gotten better and better. We've progressed. People are wiser today. They're smarter today. They know more. Now let's go back to 1776, 1787. We're talking about over 250 years ago when the Frenchman came to America and wrote the book Democracy in America. He said that whatever house he visited, whether it was plain and simple or a mansion, if it was a pioneer's house, a cabin back in the woods, the parents taught their kids. There was homeschooling. That's what they had. They may not have a public school system, but they had homeschooling. And every parent taught their kids. And there was everywhere books by Shakespeare, books about Plato, Aristotle, the classics. Yes, the classics, the Greek, the Roman classics. Now, if you ask a young kid today, does he study the classics? Has he studied Shakespeare? He wouldn't know what you were talking about, would he? No. He might know about the Grinch that stole Christmas or, I don't know, little Donald Duck, but he wouldn't know anything about the classics or Shakespeare. But this guy said that in every home he visited, whether poor or rich, the kids had a few books. They studied the classics. Did you know that Thomas Jefferson at Monticello, where he lived, where he actually was an architect, he developed the house himself. He was only in his 30s, but Thomas Jefferson had a library of over 5,000 books. Think about that. 5,000 books. That was a smart man. He could converse on any kind of subjects. John Quincy Adams spoke 7 languages. Did you hear what I said? The third president of the United States, John Quincy Adams, spoke 7 different languages. Very educated man. Today, we're just a bunch of dummies. You show a picture of president of a kid on the beach, a picture of the vice president of the United States, Joe Biden, and say, who is this man? He wouldn't know. He doesn't know who that is. You show a picture of Bill Clinton and say, who is this man? He says, I don't know. A guy like him used to look like the principal of my high school. I don't know. But I'm not sure technology has spawned a new brain. I'm not sure our brains are wired differently. I think many of us have just gone crazy. We're insane. We've been driven nuts by the technology that exists. No wonder people are going for meditation. They do want to slow things down. They're going crazy. And of course, they're taking all kinds of pills. I remember listening to a radio program some years ago, and the host said, well, he said, we're having a guest today. Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. Johnson or whatever, has brought her, I think it was her 9-year-olds to get from class today to learn what we do in radio. There they are outside in the studio. They have a glass panel there. And there they were in the studio, about 30 some odd kids. Hi, kids, he said, the host. Then suddenly the host said, I'd like to do an experiment here. He said, there's about 30 or 35 kids here. How many of you children take a pill every day? They all raised their hands. Really, he said. He said, well, how many of you take a pill because you're too nervous or you're too anxious or you hit somebody? Or almost all but 1 or 2 raised their hands. And what is the pill, Sanders? Sanders over here in the broadcasting area. Ritalin, thank you, Ritalin. Hey, are you taking Ritalin? Okay. He asked him, how many of you children are now prescribed or receiving Ritalin every day? And about 25 out of the 30 or 35 raised their hands. They knew what Ritalin was. And they knew they were taking it every day. Ritalin. That's amazing. The whole world is taking Ritalin. Well, that actually is something, an excitant that sort of, makes you sort of, shaky and excited and all that stuff. But when you give it to kids who are already excitable or shaky, it supposedly calms them down a little bit. Now, I doubt that, but anyway, that's the theory behind it. Brings them down from their high, and if a kid is a normal kid in class today, well, he's incorrigible. He's, if he pulls the little girl's hair, sits behind the little girl and pulls her hair, and the teacher sees him, he's a monster. Because he's not behaving. But when he gets in high school, if he slugs the teacher or takes out a knife and stabs him, that's okay. He probably needs a little bit of counseling, that's all. And if he's black, he'll probably be given an award for it. I'm not quite sure what they do nowadays for that. But sometimes that does happen, it seems like. They're all in a trance state. The kids have all been put into a drug-like, pharmaceutical-induced state in which they really are hypnotic based. They really can't figure out what's going on. They're not themselves. And when you receive these drugs as a little kid, your brain never has a chance to develop. If you receive drugs like that at age 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then 20 years from now, you're going to be at that same development level as you were as a kid. Your brain is never given a chance then to progress, to develop. The transformation of humanity. Now, machines today. I recently wrote a book called Robot Alchemy. Robot Alchemy. Subtitle, Androids, Cyborgs, and the Magic of Artificial Life. Robot Alchemy. I'm not sure that most people understood robot alchemy. Hundreds of beautiful pictures in all the newer robots. They can talk, they can move, they can think. They're almost like human beings now. I suppose some use robots for sex activity. I didn't have any like that in my book. I don't think I did. I didn't mean to. What is the robot? Well, for the rich today, they believe that through robotics, they can become transhuman. In other words, they can bypass or go past the human stage. That's what the word trance means. And move up and become some kind of a superhuman. Why, they can receive eternal life. In fact, many believe that they're going to be able to take their brains and everything in their brains they can download into a biochip. And then they can take a body of a robot, make it a beautiful body, or an ugly, but whatever they want. It can be a box-looking like thing, or it can be a gorgeous. Then maybe they'll give you a catalog. You pick the body you want. They'll download your brain into that, and then your body is no good anymore after that. They'll just go ahead and kill you and put you in the, whatever, burn you or throw you in the ocean, whatever. They don't need you anymore. They've got an eternal body. You say, Texe, that will never happen. Well, about 140 of the world's richest billionaires were in New York City just last year for a world conference on transhumanism. They wanted to know what they needed to do to buy a biochip and to download their brain into it so they could live forever. Oh, yes. You see, God has told us in the Bible we're going to live for a certain period of time. That's all our bodies are going to live. I mean, I'm sorry. That's it. Everybody must die. Not everybody has to pay taxes. It's not true that only two certain things are death and taxes. Death, for sure. But these men believe that, they're going to live forever. They don't want Jesus Christ. If you have Jesus, I can promise you're going to live forever. You're going to live forever. But otherwise, I'm not sure. I think you're sunk. You're in a hypnotic trance state if you believe you're going to live forever. Your soul does not go into that biochip. I don't even know what that biochip is going to think. I don't think it's going to be, I don't think you can duplicate the soul, the spirit of a man or woman. Now, artificial intelligence, they're developing it now, and one company says we can put the brain of a human being in a robot. And they believe now they're about 90% of everything in your brain can go in a robot. Of course, President Obama has declared a human genome project. They're going to map the brain and every person on earth, they're going to map the brain, and they'll find out what you're like, where you came from. If you commit a crime and you leave genetic material there, they're going to have a picture made. It'll say whether you have red hair or black hair, brown hair, blue eyes, whether you're fat or skinny, squat, tall, what race you are, where you came from, based on a little bit of spittle or blood or skin or a hair. Wow. Won't that be a crime solver? You got a hair left after a murder. We'll take that hair and we'll come out with a picture of the man. It'll be a 3D picture. It'll be a laser-generated picture. He'll walk and move about just like a real man. There's our criminal. Go get him. Wow. And they're building data banks across the DNA data banks, as I told you they would in my book, Project Lucid. Project Lucid tells you all about it. DNA data banks all over the world. Everyone will have their DNA data in a bank. It's amazing, isn't it? Microchips, nanorobots. Everybody, of course, will become a cyborg. You got a bad liver, a bad kidney, a bad heart, you get a new one. And people will change who they are almost with gene splicing. We'll all be robots. That's what they say. And God will change too. Or will he change? Will God stay the same, but we think different about him? I think that's already happened. I think people don't love the true God that exists, but some God that they've created in their own brain. The God of their understanding. And everyone will have a smorgasbord God. You'll have a God that you've chosen, but he'll be different than your neighbor's God. Why? Because you have your own needs, your own desires. And that God has to serve you, not the other way around. Your God will be chosen because he will serve you. That's the where we're headed toward. I'm Texe Morris. We're going to be right back after this brief message. Stay with us, won't you? We're looking at the transformation of humanity. Hello again, friends. I'm Texe Morris. Recently I wrote a book called Robot Alchemy. It's the most astonishing book, and I sent it to many of my friends, and I think they were sort of like taken aback. I guess they didn't know that I was interested in robots, but actually, I'm interested in all kinds of technology and how it's affecting the human brain and really taking man away from God. And that's what I discussed in Robot Alchemy. That's why I use the term alchemy. What does alchemy mean? It means the occult, the hidden, the deep and dark things. There's a lot of bad things about robots, and yet they seem so wonderful. Why, wouldn't you like a robot to help you around the house? Wouldn't you like a robot to drive your car for you so you can read and, love the scenery as you go by? A lot of people would. A lot of people would like just a mate, so to talk with them, to converse with them, to sit down on the couch and say, how was your day, master? That leads to another point. Some people want to be the master. And it doesn't seem like you can be a master. There's always problems with people, but with robots, why, you can program them and then they'll be your servant forever. They'll worship you. You'll be their idol. They will believe you're their God. I wonder if that's why robots are taking hold today. Now, if you don't believe they're taking hold, my friends, oh my goodness, I hope you'll get to a computer and Google up the word robot. Advancement in robots. Look at that. See what's going on. In fact, you may not realize it, but your government has spent billions for robots. Oh, I've known about this for a long time. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, spent billions. They're going to be used in warfare. A drone is a robot, of course. Pilotless aircraft of many different sizes. Your morning newspaper, or if you buy something from Amazon on the internet, they might deliver it to you by drone within a couple of years. You order something from internet and a drone arrives and parks right in front of your door, and you take the package out of the drone and it takes off back to Amazon. You get the same package in one day. How could that be? Well, it might be that letters are sent that way. Maybe you'll own your own drone. Maybe you'll own a fleet of drones. And they'll be sending correspondence letters everywhere. They'll be traveling, wherever your friends are. In Borneo, Indonesia, Toledo, Ohio, or Tulsa, Oklahoma. It sounds so incredible, but I've studied cyborgs, androids, robots, and I believe we're on the very threshold of something amazing, wonderful, and frightening. Frightening. Now, this book has hundreds of photos, gorgeous photos. I have done research at the top labs. I haven't personally done the research, but I've found out what they're doing and gone there and taken the pictures, and many of them are right. They send me their state-of-the-age photographs and of what they're doing. There's robots that look exactly like human beings. They flutter their eyes, their eyelids, that is. And they speak in a nice, soft voice. And you think they're just lovely. There's a book out recently called Sex with Robots. Goodness gracious, I missed that book. I never got it. I wasn't too interested in that. But, boy, with everything happening today, no telling what's going to happen next with robots. Of course, there's the police robots. The professional athlete robot, you heard it right. How are you going to feel about a pro football game when all the participants are robots? It looks like we're started developing robots among the pro players now. They don't look like you and I, do they? They're the NBA basketball stars or whatever. They look like androids. Well, anyway, Robot Alchemy is the name of the book. Hope you'll order it from us. It's $30. Add $5 shipping and handling, a total of $35. It's about twice as big as a regular book, and hundreds of color photos. It's a lovely book. I give my people here credit. Sandra Myers put this book in print for me. I wrote every word. I got all the pictures. I've chose them. But she does a lot better job in arranging things. If you got our newsletter every month, you know that Sandra does a great job in all the pictures and the print and all that. And she makes it look good. The newsletter says what I say, but she does make it look good. I give her great credit for that. Okay. It takes some good people in a ministry to put out a book like Robot Alchemy. And we do. I want you to have a copy of this. I was the first person in the world to write a book on robot careers. Robot careers. I was the first person to write the personal robot book. A book about personal robots. Robots you could use in your home. You could own. The personal robot book. In fact, that book was a selection of the Computer Book Club and the Electronics Book Club. People say, well, Tex, what are you doing writing books like that? Well, what am I doing writing books called DNA Science in the Jewish Bloodline? Or what am I doing writing a book on mysterious monuments about architecture? Or what am I doing writing a book on Codex Magica about the secret hand signs of the elite and of the Illuminati? I'm just interested in these subjects. God has put them in my heart. Nobody else writes about them, but I do. And I've written this book, and some people say, at least some people say, it's the most foresighted book they've ever seen on robots. It's just incredible. Well, I don't know how incredible it is, just something I enjoy doing and researching. And I think you will enjoy it too. Again, $30, add $5 shipping and handling, a total of $35 for this book. You can write to us, send us your check or money order or cash to Power of Prophecy or to Texe Mars, 1708 Patterson Road, Patterson Road, Austin, Texas, 78733. You can go to our website. Ask for the book Robot Alchemy. Order it there. Use your PayPal account or your charge card. What is our website? Why, it's TexeMars.com. How easy can it be? Or PowerOfProphecy.com. PowerOfProphecy.com. By the way, you can get all our books there. All the books I just mentioned a while ago and many more in our tapes. You get today's program, a 2-tape set, The Transformation of Humanity, parts 1 and 2, from our website. Or just by calling our toll-free number, 1-800-234-9673. 1-800-234-9673. Now, let's return to our regular program. We're discussing the transformation. That's trance, Trance, Formation, of humanity. This is part 2. We're looking at machines and God. And finally, the exaltation of a certain tribe of people who claim to be God's chosen, who claim that they are God's on earth. They're divine beings. If you're not one of these people, and there are only about 18 million in the whole world, if you're not one, well, you're just a beast. You're only fit to be their slave. That's what they say in their Talmud, the Jews do. You know, I've got a real feeling in my heart about that. You see, God says he's the boss and he's arranged things the way he wants, and he says he is no respecter of persons. He says that the concept of seed is spiritual. And he says in his book, the Holy Bible, in the book of Galatians, chapter 3, verse 28, he says, if you belong to Jesus Christ, then you're Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. What promise is that? What promise did Abraham want? What did he want more than anything in his whole life? I'm going to tell you about it right now. You may not think so, but it's right there. Paul says in the Bible, he says all the prophets, they wanted one thing. One thing. In fact, all of the saints of God want just one thing. They want to be in heaven with Jesus. None of them have ever known what heaven was like except the few that went there. Some of them have died and gone there already, you know. And many more to come, the book of Revelation says. And Paul says that here we have no continuing city. Those are his words in the Bible. Here have we no continuing city. We don't have Jerusalem. We don't have Washington, D.C. We don't have Tokyo. We don't have any city. If you believe in Jesus, if you know Jesus, if you belong to him, you're Abraham's seed, you're an heir according to promise. And if you're an heir, what are you going to get? All heirs receive an inheritance. What did Abraham receive? Well, if he received the city The earthly city of Jerusalem, no good to him anymore, is it? He's not there. Jacob, how about him? How about Elijah? How about Jeremiah? How about King David? Jerusalem doesn't do them any good at all. They don't even want it. They don't even like it. They see it as nothing. They express, along with Paul, here have we no continuing city. What we want is a heavenly city with temples, with a temple made without human hands. They didn't want a temple on earth either. You know, there's some of the finest buildings in the world. I mean, there's incredible buildings. The wonders of the world are in architecture. And not a one of them is worthy of the lowliest Christian. What did I say? Not a one of the buildings on this planet are worthy of the lowliest Christian. Because everything in heaven is going to be better. It is. Paul said we can't even understand it. We cannot even imagine it. Now, I've always said, look, I'm just willing to live in a shack out in the forest somewhere. Just give me Jesus. That's all I want. Well, that's what Abraham wanted. That's what all of them wanted. They want a heavenly life, a heavenly existence. And Paul said they all look to a heavenly. I mean, you couldn't show them a great temple, a great mausoleum, a great monstrosity somewhere. They weren't interested in the White House or the Kremlin or some great building. But heaven, that's another story. That's another matter, isn't it? That's their inheritance. Eternal life with Jesus Christ in heaven. Man, they wanted that. And you know, they got it. They did. Every one of them have received that. How did they get it? Did they work for it? No, they didn't even work for it. They didn't even work for it. Now, I'm not saying they didn't work. A lot of them were very hard workers. But that's not how they got it. They got it because they believed. They believed, and it was imputed to them for righteousness. Now, that's what I call a real promise. That's what I call a real inheritance. Can you imagine going to a lawyer's meeting and them saying that, you know, you're an heir? Say, well, what did I get? Well, now, if you work your whole life, and maybe you work 100 other lives through reincarnation, maybe, just maybe, you'll get to heaven. Boy, that's pretty tough. But what if you were told, did you believe in Jesus? Yes. Oh, walk right on in. It's yours. Believe in Jesus Christ, and he'll change you forever. Well, now we have today incredible technologies. Gene splicing. Everybody says, that's great. I want to be able to choose the kind of baby I want. Boy, girl, green eyes, brown eyes. Yes. And the Jews say, we want genetic engineering to include this science. We want everybody's brain modified. We want genetically for everybody to love Israel. We want for everybody to know that Israel is God's chosen. That we Jews are superior to all men. We're going to modify their brains. Before you're ever born, we're going to implant a gene. The Jewish love gene. Before you ever come out of your mom's womb, you're going to have a gene. The Jewish gene. We will never have anti-Semitism again. You'll think, you'll act, you'll behave, you'll worship the Jews. Would you accept that gene, friends? Well, what if you don't even know about it? What if it's implanted in you before you're ever born? You may say that gene will never be born. That gene will never be developed. Are you sure? I'm here to tell you, there is a project like that. I'm not going to reveal any more about it today, but you'll know about it soon enough. If you're an anti-Semite, don't worry. They're going to take care of you as an adult. They're going to inject you with a nanorobot. It'll be so small you can't see it. It'll be given to you as a vaccine, maybe as a form of medicine. It will go in your brain, into your amygdala, the front part of your brain, and suddenly you'll think different. It'll be as if you were given a lobotomy by a nanorobot. You'll even love Big Brother. You'll do whatever Big Brother says. If he says kill your sister, your mother, your father, of course you'll do it. It's for the good of everyone. It's for your good. You'll love killing your brother. You'll love beating your mother in the head with a stick till she's dead. How do I know? Because that's genetics. There was a book some years ago written by an English scientist entitled The Selfish Gene. This scientist, Philip Dawkins, if I can remember right, said that the problem with humanity is we all have a selfish gene. A gene that does not love our Mother Earth. A gene that, believes in that old fundamentalist God. We need to get rid of that gene. And we can have a new earth. We can have a great utopia on this planet if everybody were to change their genes. Get rid of that gene. Get rid of that selfish gene. Isn't that frightening to you? Your baby is born, or you are taken away to a hospital, and they say, this operation will only take 5 minutes, and when you come out, you'll be thinking different. You'll be born again. Yes. But it's a different kind of birth, isn't it? We'll give you a new gene. We'll get rid of your selfish genes. We'll have created the Borg. I believe this is the future of humanity, dear friends. The Borg. What is the Borg? It is the integration of all the brains on this planet. A planetary brain. A planetary computer system. I don't know what form it will take. We used to think of it as one big giant computer. Remember the UNIVAC machines that were as big as a house? But they were only able to do the work of an iPhone today. Not even that much computer work. But today, thousands of brains, millions, perhaps several billion, can think alike with the internet. But that has not been wired into your brain yet. There has not been a gene or a chip of some sort to integrate the internet so that you think just like everyone else and they think like you do. You're part of the Borg. B-O-R-G. You used to think about this deity called Jesus Christ, but you don't anymore. You're part of the Borg. And someone has decided what the Borg will think, and that's what it will think. And the Borg will be you, and you will be it, and it will be humanity. And that will be the total transformation of humanity. And little Dorothy will have it right when she says, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. Christians even today are changing without becoming a member of the Borg or part of the Borg or part of the internet. Without their brains being rewired, they're changing. Everywhere I go, I talk about the old Jesus. They say, I want to know about the new. I don't believe in sin and hell and those things. Let's talk about a new Jesus, a positive Jesus. I want a best way. I want everyone to consider that God is, he's Friday for everybody. Friday at 5 o'clock, that's God. Well, The Jews say that we're all sinking. We're going to sink into Judaism. They say that Christianity came out of Judaism and it's going to fold back into Judaism. There will be a Jewish utopia. That's in the Jewish law book, which of course is called the Babylonian Talmud. In the Talmud, it says that the Jews will someday receive their kingdom. But it will be a kingdom unlike anything you've ever conceived. It will be a kingdom in which the Jews will be masters and the Gentiles will be their slaves. And all of the slaves will give all of the riches to the Jews. And the Jews will be as gods on earth. They will be gods. They will not need a God to overlook them or oversee them or watch them. They will be their own gods, their own deities. I was reading a book by Douglas Rushkoff entitled Not Sacred. He says, we Jews are so bright, we're so intelligent, we're so smart. We don't need the old God. We don't need the old God of Judaism. We can change Judaism. We can call it Judaism, but it'll be a different form of Judaism. Why, we can be our own gods. We can write our own rules. In fact, that's what Jews do now. We write our own rules in the Babylonian Talmud. That's not written by God, that's written by rabbis. And it says in the Babylonian Talmud, the one that the Jews use today in their synagogues, it says that Jews are smarter than God and that rabbis give God spiritual advice. Well, I never knew that. When God needs spiritual advice, he has to go to a rabbi. Well, when this new world comes, though, we'll all be part of the Borg. We'll be wireless, of course. You'll have Wi-Fi in your home, everywhere. The whole world will be Wi-Fi. And I don't suspect they'll call it Bluetooth, but somehow you'll be connected to the international Wi-Fi system. And you know that old guy, the mean one? The one that died on the cross for your sins? He'll be gone. Let me tell you what I think is going to happen, friends. Man is becoming very arrogant. To become your own Messiah, your own God, that's very arrogant. To say that our God will be as we understand him, as we choose. He'll serve us. That's what they say now. You know, Kenneth Copeland and all of the charismatics, you know what? That's what they say. Don't pray to God, just command him. Decree, God, go get this for me. Go do this for me. Serve me. They say envision a God, create an image of God, and after he has come to you, say go and do this. That's what Kenneth Hagin said. He says, tell God, go and bring me money. Benny Hinn said, we don't need God, money in heaven. We need it right now. I did a whole video on things like that, showing what these people are really saying. It's entitled, The Blind and the Dead. The Blind and the Dead. You might want to order that video. The beauty of the Jewish religion, according to the Jews, is that it's changing. It has the capability of changing because it's not written by God. It's not the mind of God. It's what Jesus said are the traditions of the elders. Remember that? That's in the New Testament. You do not worship the God of your fathers, but instead you have for your religion the tradition of your fathers. The traditions. It's whatever the rabbis say, the ancient rabbis. The wise, the all-wise rabbis. They know more than God. They've even put it all in a book. There's, 613 laws in that book. Then there's the Kabbalah that has all the secrets and the mysticism and the occultism. And it says the Jews are to be worshipped. Only the Jews are chosen by God. Only they are the seed of Abraham. Well, now that's not what the Bible says. I've expressed it to you today. It says, if you be Christ, then are you Abraham's seed. They say, no, that's wrong. We know our rabbis have told us. And millions of Christians believe the Jews instead of God. I have not talked to one pastor. Let me say something to you, friends. I am over 70 years of age. I have never in my life, and I've talked to a lot of pastors, I've never talked to a pastor who has read and can understand Galatians chapter 3 and 4, for that matter. And it is so simple. It says Abraham had a seed. That seed is Jesus Christ. Do you understand that, friends? The seed is Jesus Christ. And then it goes on to say in Galatians 3, and if ye belong to Christ, if you are Christ's, then are you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So let's go back and look at it again. Abraham, he was made righteous by God. Abraham had a seed, has a seed. His name, Jesus. Everyone who believes in Jesus Christ, including Abraham, is Abraham's seed. It's a spiritual matter. It's a spiritual matter. Why? I don't believe that. I believe in physical things. I want something I can touch, I can feel. You don't want the Bible then. Jesus said you must be born again in spirit and in truth. Oh, you can't see truth. You can't feel spirit, can you? I believe if you know Jesus Christ, you can. You can feel it. You can know it. You can taste it. And you'll be the heir. The Jews say, I want right now. I want my riches on earth. I want to be my own God, my own Messiah. Give it to me. And they killed the Messiah. They killed the just one. They're exalted by Christians everywhere today, but not by God. Humble yourself before God, and He will exalt you. Remember that, friends. Humble yourself before God, and He will exalt you in due time. This is Texe Mars. It's been great being with you today. We've looked at the transformation of humanity, parts 1 and 2. We have seen